Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko. And this week, I'm joined by novelist, screenwriter, and all-round earth angel, Susin Nielsen. This is the first episode in my collaboration with the Book Warehouse. It was recorded live at their Main Street store, and it was an absolute blast. Susan and I talk about everything from anger management as creative inspiration, the difference between therapy and therapeutic, and what inspired her to write her latest novel, Snap. All that and so much more, so it's time to lean back, get comfy, set your volume at a reasonable level, and enjoy my interview with Susin Nielsen here on Friendless. This week on Friendless, I have an incredible guest that I am so excited to interview live at the Book Warehouse. She is the author of Snap, amongst a myriad of other books of all age ranges and topics. The one, the only Susin Nielsen. How are you today?
I am very well, James. Yes, I'm a podcast virgin, so this is my first ever podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I've never been on one, so I'm very excited.
I feel very blessed that I get to expose you to the world. I'm trying really hard not to get inappropriate with that. The moment you say...
I kind of set you up.
Right? That's a sabotage moment. There's no gotcha moment. The whole series that we're doing with Book Warehouse is with the intention of trying to get local authors, not just here talking about their books, but also talking about their community. And I think Snap is such an incredible sort of platform for that kind of conversation, because not only does it read as a beautiful exploration of the characters they've created, but also it reads very much like a love letter to Vancouver. And I had just adored it. But before we dive into that further, for any listeners who may not be familiar with your work, I'll open with a question that I ask all my guests in varying levels of aggressiveness. Who the hell are you?
I would say that was moderately aggressive.
Right.
No worse than that. Well, who the hell am I? God, I mean, that could be a very long answer. I mean, I was a, little girl from Ontario, grew up with a single parent mom, spent a lot of time alone because she had to go off to work every day. I was a latchkey kid and, spent a lot of time making up imaginary games and in my imagination and reading library books. And, this is not a sad story because it
sounds like paradise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a good childhood. And, I love my mom very much. We were really tight. But yeah, good Lord, how much detail could I get into?
The nice thing is podcasts are literally the platform to yap. So by all means, give us the long version if you want. Yeah.
Well, I started writing at quite a young age. My mom kept everything of mine, which wound up being a gold mine after I started publishing my first book, Word Nerd. I actually found all these boxes of my old journals and my old writing. And I found the first diary that I ever kept when I was 11 years old. And the opening paragraph literally reads, "This is the first day I've written in a diary. The reason I am is because I love writing stories. And if I do grow up to later die and they want to get a story of my life, I guess I should keep a diary."
You're a forward thinker. I love it. I love it. I had a prof at university who always said, if you want to be remembered, write it down. Doesn't matter what you write, just write something down, and eventually you'll be useful to someone.
That's amazing.
Right? Yeah.
I feel embarrassed that I'm giving you such a super long-winded answer.
No, I love the way you frame the idea of, nowadays, for some reason, when somebody hears, "Oh, I spent a lot of time in the library," for some reason, there's this belief that that's a, "Oh, I'm so sorry," right? I don't know what the right word for it is.
Well, it's true, and I had to tell you, this isn't a sad story. Well, yeah. I always feel like I need to tell people that it wasn't a sad story.
Yeah, and you were flashing me back to when I was a kid and how excited I was to go to the library, how excited I was to even if it was to take out the exact same book again for weeks on end or whatever it might be, just the paradise of the library and of that almost kind of sanctuary feeling, I don't want to be a doom and gloom type person to be like, oh, and everything's wrong and everything's broken, but I don't know how to refoster that excitement. And maybe it's that you don't in adults. Maybe you don't refoster it in adults. Maybe you just try and get the next generation excited. You just go to the kids again.
Do you mean about books in particular, or?
I guess both. I think the library as an entity, but also, I think books in general,
Yeah, I don't know that I know how to answer that question,
Yeah.
James. That's a
Yeah.
tough one.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
spitballing here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like adults are still reading a lot. Whether or not young people are still reading a lot, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
And I only know things anecdotally, so I wouldn't feel like I could really speak to that
Totally.
necessarily.
So that leads me to
Uh,
your career has spanned so many different kind of, I guess you could call it readerships or, reader types or
Mm.
however you want to. So you have a wealth of experience, whether you want to admit it or not, or whether you even recognize it or not. You have a wealth of sort of information that not everybody has access to. And I'm curious about, in your time when you were writing predominantly kind of youth or young perspective books, what was the sort of anecdotal reception of reading and of books in young people?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, first of all, I am at a point in my life where I can actually say, yes, I do have a wealth of experience just because I'm, old. So for a long time, I was very firmly in that world of tween and teen, starting with my television career because
Yeah.
my first ever gig on a TV show was with Degrassi Junior High.
Right. Was this Degrassi Junior High the original, like with Joey Jeremiah and Caitlin?
That
And
is how old I am.
okay,
Yes,
okay.
it was the original.
It's one of my
and
favorite shows of all time. So thank you for your work. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. That show, yeah, I mean, it was absolutely the best iteration of the Degrassi show. And I felt incredibly lucky to be able to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The first season I did craft services, and I was very terrible at that job, but I really loved working on the show. So
Sure.
between first and second season, I wrote a speculative
Yeah,
script,
okay.
and I very boldly gave it to the head writer, Jan Moore,
Yeah.
who wrote most of the episodes. And he read it, and I believe Linda Schuyler read it, the creator of Degrassi, and he told me, we don't think this is very good, but we see a spark in your writing, so we're going to give
Sure.
you a shot at writing an episode.
Yeah.
And I think I was about 22, which is amazing. I know, looking
Yeah.
back, 22 or 23. And I wound up writing 16 episodes of Degrassi Junior High and High. And I wrote books while I was there because they did all these novelizations. So, and one day
Neat.
Linda just said, do you want to write the book about Shane? And I said, okay, because I just never said no to any opportunity like
Yeah.
that. So I wrote Shane, Wheels, Snake, and Melanie. And I thought someday I'm going to write an original young adult novel because this is really fun. And then I was in that world for many years in the TV world, writing for a lot of teen and tween shows. Ready or Not, Madison, Adventures of Shirley Holmes, Braceface, like all these shows.
Yep.
And I finally, in my 40s, sat down and wrote Word Nerd, and then 6 more after that. And so, yes, indeed, I haven't forgotten your original question.
Yes, yeah. No,
I'm just somebody.
I love a roundabout. Yeah. I call it AD detail, and I love it. Yeah.
Marvelous.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm big on going off on tangents.
Yep.
And actually, what was super fun was like after Word Nerd was published, it was like crickets. I can tell you that, like crickets.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, well, I guess that's just, that's what it's like. I mean, any author you speak to, especially with their first book, I mean, it is kind of crickets. But then it started winding up on a lot of Young Readers' Choice Awards lists across Canada. So for the first time ever, I started to be like doing school visits and presenting in front of kids and going to events with a lot of kids. And not just with Word Nerd, but with all of my books, it wound up being remarkably gratifying because some kids are, of course, indifferent when you go into the school, but there were a lot of kids who told me that my books got them back into reading.
Yeah.
Because they could identify, they could see themselves, or they could see somebody they knew. And there was a lot of humor in the books as well, as even as they were dealing with tougher subjects. And it was really, maybe a little bit of a barfy word, but a little bit heartwarming to see that there are legions of kids out there who and thoroughly enjoy reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who still love escaping into those worlds. So yeah.
Coming back to the idea, what you just brought up about the idea of kids, when they get kind of sparked with something, it sort of triggers them to then cascade into, and I'm remembering when I was a kid, I was really into Eric Wilson books. He read a chapter of his new book at my school one time. There was a reading challenge to read as many of his as you could.
I mean, Eric Walters, do you?
No. And this is the thing. I have moments sometimes, I swear, I sometimes have like those like what do they call it, the like Mandela effect moments whenever I talk about Eric Wilson, because everybody's like, who? What are you talking about? But
No, but did he write mysteries as well?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, that
yes,
Eric Wilson. I
yes,
totally know who you mean.
yeah.
I think I didn't know he wrote children's books as
They
well,
were
or middle grade, or
yeah, they were
yeah.
it was like a brother and sister. I can't remember their names now, but they mysteries kind of across Canada. So each book was
Oh,
like,
fun.
there was like the Vampires of Ottawa, and there was the something in Alberta or the Stampede. It was fun because it felt a little grown up. It was a little dangerous, but it was also Canada, So it was like
Yeah.
adventures in Edmonton, and they went to the West End Mall, and that then propelled me to want to read other stuff, right? And it challenged me to read bigger and different books. And this is why I
Awesome.
think the work that you do is so valuable. I think that people like you need to be sort of celebrated a little bit more, in that all it takes is one author to latch on, and then you've got a reader for life.
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, I don't know that I need to be celebrated. But thank you. I'll tell my husband you said that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a really good point, and I always love hearing that from readers, whether it's one of my books or somebody else's
Yeah.
book. That's the one that kind of opened up that world to them.
Yes.
And certainly for me growing up, it was Judy Blume.
Yeah.
I mean, it absolutely was Judy
Yes.
Blume. And she did that for a lot of young readers and a lot of future writers, I think.
No, she's magnificent. Yeah.
Paul
Yeah.
Zindel, that was another one I remember. Paul Zindel, My Darling, My Hamburger.
Oh my God.
I actually dealt with abortion, which I think would be like super hard to do today, weirdly.
This is a bit of a digression, but it's coming off something you just said about the idea of content, right? The idea of often people will say, oh, that could never get made now, or this could never get made now. And then stuff gets made that's even more challenging, and stuff gets made that's even more relevant or exploratory or whatever it might be. And I'm curious, in your own creative work, have you experienced moments where you've wanted to put something into a book and you've been stopped? You don't have to name names or anything
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
that's okay.
Or is that sort of an idiom that just pops up sometimes?
No, I mean, I think it's very true. I could tell you two very different stories, I suppose. The story I will tell you is I don't think I've ever shied away from something that I have wanted in one of my books. I did have my American editor on No Fixed Address. The Americans wanted me to take something out of that book, and it's actually a moment when Felix, who has been living in a van with his mom, it's kind of about the hidden homeless, and he's very sick, goes to school anyways because it's at least warm at school, gets in a fight with his friends, winds up at the local library, falls asleep in one of the little study carrels, and wakes up, and there's an older man beside him masturbating.
Okay.
And he has to leap up and flee from the library. They really wanted me to take that out. And I've actually gotten some angry letters from parents about that particular bit too.
Yeah.
And for me, the reason I kept it in is because what I was trying to show was that there was sort of the safe places for him were getting fewer and fewer. And it's not to say, obviously, a library is generally a safe place. But I can tell you, like, I remember growing up and having multiple incidents like that happen out in the world as a young girl.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's completely disappeared. So that was why I said, no, thanks. I'd like to keep it in. And I think I actually missed out. They wanted to do like the Scholastic books. Remember how you could, I loved,
the book fair.
oh my God, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And when you could order books and then they'd arrive and it was like Christmas.
Best.
It was so much fun. And they were going to do like a sort of like trimmed down version of one of my books. It might have been No Fixed Address, but I had to agree to cutting out a bunch of content. So I just said, no, I'm just not interested in that. And,
you can get in the book fair another time,
I know. Exactly.
But I think that's brilliant. And I think that's such an interesting perspective on that conversation around censorship. And I wonder if you had been in a different stage of your career, if you would have had the ability to hold your ground as strongly as you could.
I doubt that I would have. I mean, if I had been quite a bit younger, by that point, I was probably in my late 40s, maybe early 50s. And one of the really great pleasures of getting older as a woman, especially, is that you just have a greater ability to stand up for yourself.
Totally.
And if that had happened in my 20s, I would have just done whatever people wanted me to do. There's not a right or wrong answer, really.
Not,
Like, would it have been the end of the world if that wasn't in the book? Well, probably not.
Sure. Yeah.
Can we move on from masturbation?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely we can. So that actually leads me really nicely into the book itself, into Snap. To begin with, I'm curious if you could tell me a little bit about kind of I don't know what the right word for it would be, the impetus, the inspiration for it. Moving from all the books that you had written and now deciding to finally write a quote unquote adult book, and what led you to creating the book.
Okay, well, I'm going to take you back in time again. After Word Nerd was published, about a year after it was published, I started getting invited to do school visits. And I was very new to this. And it was honestly terrifying for a long time. Yeah. And I was invited to one school outside of Toronto. And I was surprised to find out that I was speaking to the entire middle grade school of 500 kids in a gym, which I hadn't agreed to, first of all, but was too afraid to say anything.
Yep.
And I had a PowerPoint presentation because I was told you got to, keep them entertained.
Yeah.
But of course, most of them hadn't read my book. So, I did a presentation about writing for TV, writing for books, and the differences. And how much of this story do I tell? At one point, I showed a slide of all of the crew of a TV show I'd worked on and all the people it takes to make a TV show. And that you're kind of the architect as the writer, and then the construction crew comes in and builds it, right? And when you write a book, it was just me in my office with my cat, which of course isn't entirely true, obviously. I have a wonderful team of editors, etc.
Sure.
So a boy at the end of the presentation raised his hand, and in front of his 499 classmates said something really vile and misogynistic about the picture with me and my cat. I will leave it up to people's imagination. And I was so stunned and humiliated, honestly. I just remember that feeling of humiliation. And I saw a teacher at the end of the aisle go, like this look of horror on her face. I thought, okay, she's going to deal with this kid. And also because these were 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
It went over a lot of kids' heads.
Sure.
She made a beeline to me. I wrapped up very shortly afterwards. She made a beeline to me afterwards. And I thought, okay, she's going to tell me they're going to deal with this kid. And she said, you said you worked on Degrassi. Did you meet Drake?
Oh, from the teacher.
Yeah, from the teacher. And I have to really, really emphasize I'm not proud of this at all. And that also, I've done so many school visits since then.
Sure.
And they are 99% positive and lovely. But in that moment, I snapped.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I did not meet Drake. Permission to go speak to that kid. So I wound my way through the gym, caught up with him out in the corridor. Again, not proud of this, but I am fairly certain I grabbed his arm and spun him around. Yeah. And I tore a strip off him. I told him, would you speak to your mother like that? Would you speak to your sister like that? You should never speak to a woman like that. And I saw a teacher watching, and I was shaking. I went back to the auditorium, grabbed my stuff, and as I was walking out of the school, I had two thoughts. One was, I am never going to be invited to do school visits again. Like, my name is going to be blacklisted.
Sure.
And this is a huge part of how authors make a living, is these school visits. And my second thought was, boy, that would make a really good opening chapter to a book. So flash forward like a long time, like at least 15 years. And I mentioned that my last middle grade novel, Tremendous Things, which I think was published in 2021, while I was writing that book, I'm very proud of that book. I like that book very much. But it was the first time I ever had the feeling that I might be getting really close to repeating myself.
Mm.
And that really freaked me out.
Mm-hmm.
Then my show for global family law,
Mm-hmm.
we actually got a green light. And
Mhm.
so for 4 years, I was show running family law, which was super fun, but I was writing for adults. And so during that time, suddenly the voices in my head were no longer kids' voices, they were grown-up voices. And Francis, the protagonist of Snap, who snaps spectacularly at a school visit off the top of the book, really started to talk to me.
Mm.
And I decided it was time to try something new. And there's similarity in all of my books. They're
Sure.
always a blend of comedy and drama and pathos and hopefully some really sweet moments. I tend to write books where things work out well in the end because maybe it's because of the world we live in. I feel like we need those sorts of novels along with the weightier ones. But I also I don't want to be stale. So I really wanted to try something.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous. I just read something the other day talking about how one of the reasons we use fiction is to essentially practice what we might be able to do in the future. It's a way to it's almost like a dress rehearsal for what culture or what society could be. And the argument that was being raised was this idea of, more often than not, we call something realistic when it centers essentially a white supremacist paradigm of control and subjugation and horror and pain and all the rest. And it was saying, we need to create speculative fiction that isn't just a dress rehearsal for fascism, but it could potentially be a dress rehearsal for other potential versions of society. And you actually really tweaked something in as you were saying, that it's one of the reasons I loved the book so much. And what I found so uplifting about it was bad stuff does happen, but at the end of the book, everyone gets not necessarily what they wanted, but what they needed. And more often than not, that's better than what they thought they wanted, And I think that is no less, no qualitatively lower than if it was, and then everybody dies and is miserable and is right, it's like, who cares, like, because sometimes it works out, we don't have to only have fiction that says, and it never works out and it's always bad and it always gets worse, And so I think it's really powerful to choose a resolution where characters get satisfaction,
Yeah.
And there's something very comforting in that, but not in a kind of a docile, placating way either. It's just comforting of like, yeah, sometimes it can work out.
Yeah.
And you say that's sort of an impetus for most of your writing, do you find? Or like, is that intentional, or is that just sort of how it sort of shakes out for you?
I think that's a good question. Is it intentional? I think it's just probably who I am as a person. I think I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, although I have my moments for sure. And certainly in my middle grade fiction, I suppose it was intentional in the sense that I wouldn't want to leave those young readers in a dark place. And also my protagonists are all young, and no matter what terrible things have happened to them, and to some of them, some pretty awful things have befallen them, but they're young and there is still hope. I would find it hard to write a book that was just relentlessly sad or that had no hope at the end. Ugh. Yeah, I would find that really difficult. So I suppose it's my own worldview creeping in,
I think that's beautiful.
Even as it's right about now, sometimes it's a little bit harder. We have to be optimistic, right? We have to be.
I think there's a difference between sort of like naivete and then sort of like a pragmatic hope, I think that just saying, it'll work out, and like but then not doing anything about it is sort of one direction. I think saying like, no, we can make it work out.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, do you want it? Do you want that future?
Well, and I also really like what you said about, people writing things as almost a rehearsal. And certainly I know one thing I have done in a number of my books is that before we started recording, I told you that I have the same very judgy inner monologue that Francis has.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of this.
Hey.
What I've often done in my books is sometimes taken something that I've been rather judgmental about and or dismissive about or looked at in a bit of a black and white fashion, and kind of unpacked my own judginess. And because of course nothing is ever black and white, right? And so yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting way that you articulated that.
The way that the three characters, we've got Francis, who's the not you, but the
but has a lot of
the author,
similarities.
we have Parker, who's this young girl who's working on film, and something really terrible happens with a star, and she kind of takes the fall for it, and then we have Garrett, my boo, my guy. What I loved about him was that he has this series of unfortunate events, but the way he is presented as very ingrained people pleasing and how that correlates to anger is what I actually found so fascinating about. We were talking just before we started recording about the idea of your own perspective on things like emotional regulation and anger. How intentional were you around presenting each character's emotional intelligence and their journey through that?
Gee, I think you're investing me with way more smarts than I actually have.
It could be instinctual too, though.
That's so interesting. Do you think I work from... Okay, another tangent. An episode I wrote of Ready or Not, which was a tween show with Amanda and Busy. Do you
remember it, yeah.
Ready or not, can't wait another day, a little in shock. What would your mother say?
I think it's 2 o'clock. I'm just getting home from school. Oh my God. I'm having my own flashback now,
I wrote an episode, I think they were at summer camp, and the creator, Elise Rosenberg, came to me and told me she thought my episode was absolutely beautifully written. It was such an exploration of, and she went into this big philosophical explanation of my episode. And when she was done, I just looked at her and I said, really? I thought it was about a girl who was afraid of bugs.
Right.
So
but isn't that the magnificence of art, right? Isn't that the beautiful thing? Once you create something, you give it to somebody, and then it kind of becomes theirs, right? And
well,
they
that's
get to say,
absolutely
that's
very
right?
true. Different people draw different things from it, but I do think I'm absolutely much more of an instinctual writer than I am coming from a place of intellect.
Sure.
I mean that sincerely. I probably was less thinking about each of their, emotional regulation ability, how they dealt with emotions, than I was about their backstories and who they each were as people. And I obviously wanted them to be very distinct from each other. So you've got, Garrett, who's he's so guileless. I mean, I just love him.
He's the best.
And then Parker, I mean, she and Garrett have some similarities in that they both are very optimistic people. And Parker so wants to cling to that optimism and so wants to believe in her vision boards, and that she can just, she can manifest her way out of this shitty situation that this piece of shit actor has, put her into. And then there's, Francis, again, who's a lot more like me, more pragmatic, more pessimistic for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm drawn to, I think, stories of, many authors do this. This is no wheel reinvention here.
Sure.
But, the idea of a group of unlikely, very different people forming unlikely friendships. I love toying with that. Anne Patchett, she wrote a wonderful book. This is the story of a happy marriage, book of essays. I think I've got the title right. And she says every author has one story in them that they repeat in different ways. Right. And for her, she says it's the Poseidon adventure, which she saw when she was a young girl. And she said, think about it, a group of completely disparate people thrown together in an unlikely situation. And how are they each going to respond? And then if you go through her novels,
they're all just Poseidon
Bel
adventure.
Canto, Patron Saint of Liars, Tom Lake, I think you could even say that about. Like, it's really interesting how you're like, oh yeah, she does have. So I'm not sure what my movie is, but it wasn't the Poseidon adventure because I didn't see that one.
Fair.
But it must have been something similar.
Yeah.
It's
really interesting. Friendless itself, often I'm exploring these questions of community and how do we foster community and how do we find it and then nurture it. And what was so exciting about the book was that it was this kind of accidental community. You know, like they all just happened there by happenstance and by their own bumbling luck. And then but none of them sat back and waited for it. They found themselves in this situation, and then they put the work that was needed in. And I find them actually to be
sometimes reluctantly, but yes,
there was definitely resistance, but they still showed up, you know? And I actually find this book to be a really magnificent example of a lot of the stuff that I try to explore, try to talk about. And I guess I'm curious about the idea of fostering community. How much went into your own kind of consideration when creating the book, or just in general, and not necessarily just about the book itself, but just, you know, in your own life? Do you find yourself focusing on nurturing community sort of at work, you know, or do you try to put work aside and then make your own community outside of that? Or do you find yourself like your characters from Snap, where you're just sort of like, this is who I've been dealt, so we're working with it, you know? Right? You know?
If any of my friends listen to this, yeah, you know what? They're who I've been dealt. I'm dealing with it. Boy, that's a great question. I mean, I feel like I've got multiple answers. Like certainly when I was working on family law, for example, and you know, I mean, I was basically the boss lady. I mean, it certainly wasn't just me, and working with like an incredible team of people, and I'm a very, very good delegator. I'm you know, if I can not do something and somebody else can do it, hell yeah. But certainly, you know, in that setting, I think I was aware of absolutely wanting to foster a very warm, inviting atmosphere where people felt a part of the show, where they were respected for the work they did. You know, I had a lead actress in Jewel State who was also just brilliant at doing that. And so, you know, she played a large part in setting the tone. And I feel that I did as well as my director, producer, Andy Makita. So that I feel like we created a work family, and it was a joy to go to work. And I think most people who worked on that show felt that way, which believe me is not always the case in the television industry. Like it's actually shockingly rare, and it shouldn't be, because how lucky are we to be playing make-believe for a living? We are so lucky, and it's amazing to me how many people
kind of take it for
lose
granted.
sight of that.
Yeah.
That said, I've also never bought into the idea that should be my only community. That I'm very big on work-life balance. And while I have made lasting friendships through my work, my friendship circle, if I think about it, I mean, people come from all over. I've become very good friends with parents who we went through the school system together with our kids. I moved to Vancouver when I was 30, right?
Yeah.
So I had a great friend group in Toronto, Ontario, where I lived. And we moved out here. Yeah, let's talk about the fact that Vancouver is a bloody hard place to make friends when you move here.
Thank you for circling to this. I didn't, you know, the moment you said it, I was like, oh, right, we need to get into the Vancouver. It's a nightmare.
It's really hard. And we moved here when I was 30. My husband had a job up at UBC. So he was fine. Like he had a community to go to every day. And I was home alone with no work because I'd basically like left opportunities behind. So I was trying to find work out here. I knew next to nobody. I remember I would call the people that I had some vague thread, you know, and I remember one gal saying to me, oh yeah, it would be great to get together. I'm a little bit busy for the next 3. And I thought she was going to say days.
Months.
She actually said weeks. It wasn't months. That would have been even worse. But for me, coming from Toronto, I just remember my heart just sinking.
Yeah.
And for all that people were outwardly friendly, like in Toronto, you walk down the street and you
Head
have
down.
your blinders on, head down, kind of a scowl on your face, you know, but the community of friends, like people, we got together all the time, maybe because the winters were shitty and the summers were humid, and we would just be together all the time. And out here, I found that people were so outwardly cheery and friendly. Yeah, we should get together sometime, but try to pin any of these people down. Good Lord.
It's it's such a relief to know that it's like the municipal slogan for decades now of like, hey, we should get together, and then never seeing each other. It's nice to know that that's not a new thing, you know?
I guess I've chalked it up to, and you know what? I mean, then I feel like I probably spent a few years being really bad at being immediately warm and welcoming to newcomers too, because I think we're all too busy like skiing and biking and swimming
trying to pay your rent.
or just trying to survive and put food on the table,
Yep.
especially now. When I moved here, it wasn't that bad. But yes. So actually, like my friend circle is a friend circle that I have made since my 30s. And those people have come from all over. One of my best friends who I met in prenatal classes, and our kids are 4 days apart.
Yep.
My two fantastic friends, David and Fraser, who we met in spin class. And I guess, I feel like I've gone through phases where I haven't been as good about nurturing those friendships as I should have been. But as I get older, I think I realize more and more just how vital those friendships in our community are. And I think one thing that I'm really aware of is being open to new friendships. And as you get older, because I'm 61 now, we've recently made friends with a couple, Heather and Stephanie, if they ever listen to it. Hi, Heather and Stephanie.
I was going to say hi.
And they are like 20 and 15 years younger than my husband and I. And like making younger friends, it's particularly awesome. I think it's so lovely to have a wide circle of ages, backgrounds, experiences. Yes. I have some writer friends and some people in the TV industry, but a lot of my friends have nothing to do with any of those industries.
I think that's actually something that's really that I wish more artists kind of partook in, is the idea of like, I come from a theater background. I used to be in the theater world, and all my friends were in the theater. Everyone I knew was in the theater, and it was like a cult. It was like, did you hear about the thing? Oh, are you auditioning for this? It was like you couldn't escape, And then when I I got divorced and I moved out here, and I, my ex got theater in the divorce.
Sorry, where did you move from? Out of curiosity.
Saskatoon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Where you could take the entire theater community as a whole and put them in one of the theater spaces and not sell out the space, but it was a small community. But moving here, I didn't rejoin that community and have since really fostered connections with just whoever, and it's really kept my art, I find, more vibrant because you're not so stuck in the, maybe it's just theater, I don't know if it's the other arts, but I know in theater it's like you're not necessarily friends with your competition. You're pitted against each other,
Yeah.
Whereas if you're friends with somebody who's got a totally different line of work, you can just talk to each other about your work, and then as an artist, you can also then use it, right?
Well, that's exactly it, right? Yeah. You want to be exposed to different experiences for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
My friends, every now and then, they're looking at me, they're like, oh my God, you're going to put this in a book, aren't you? Maybe.
Right? But that's what you get for being friends with a writer, That's, That was the other element, though, that I brought it up at the start of the show, but I really wanted to circle back to is this idea of, the book, for all the characters, also very much reads like Vancouver is a character in that book, and it really read like a love letter. And, my book club read this, and everyone was saying how they loved how every chapter there was a mention of a street or a store or a location of some kind. Again, maybe this is another instinctual thing, I don't know, but I'm just curious about what made you want to tie the city so closely to the experiences of these characters?
Yeah, I mean, setting my books in Vancouver is very intentional. 6 out of 7 of my middle grade novels were set here. Gotcha. And then my very last one was set in Toronto, where I did live for 12 years. But I felt like it was weirdly like a bit of a betrayal. Sure. But I mean, it's very intentional for 2 reasons. One, I'm slightly lazy, as I mentioned before, and so it's so easy to picture my characters walking around this city, right? Yeah. But secondly, especially in the middle grade world, it made me crazy how many books I would read, and I've read a few books kind of in the realm of the snap, like lighter books, where you'll have a book written by a Canadian, but it's set in like any town, USA.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've understood that. I love to read books, and I don't care if I've ever been to that place before. Sure. I love to read books that have that specificity.
Yes.
And that, maybe make me want to go to that place sometime. I love those little details.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, like I kind of know the house that Frances lives in. It's a bit of an amalgamation of a few houses and
Sure.
kits. I like to picture, although I hear the Ellis is closed, unfortunately,
yeah.
but I loved picturing, her and her daughter Daisy and her best friend Jules having lunch where she's talking about her upcoming date. For me, I think it helps me draw richer characters,
Yes.
as opposed to just setting them somewhere that I don't know as intimately as I feel I know Vancouver, right?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe it's because I live here too that I was like, it helped me center myself, But yeah, I've encountered that for years of artists being told, set your movie in America or set your book in America or something, because then it'll have better chance of crossover sales and da-da-da, right? Because Americans don't want to read about Canadian places. And it's like, well, fuck them,
Yeah,
Who
and I
cares?
also don't think that's true.
Exactly. I think it's an archaic...
Yeah, it's like some weird holdover.
Mm-hmm.
I was really, really proud of the Four Seasons of Family Law because it's very firmly Vancouver,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, blue sky Vancouver and, and all the, like our crew, they were hilarious because, of course, they almost exclusively work on American shows
Sure.
that are shot here. And so they said, oh my God, it's so nice to shoot a show that's actually letting us be Vancouver for Vancouver.
You don't have to hide the signs.
Exactly. Yeah, get rid of the mountains.
Right, right. I'm watching the time here. So I think we can just kind of start the wrap up a little bit, but I just wanted to really make sure. I have one funny question for you and then a wrap up question and then we can get out of here.
Yeah,
But
no, I'm enjoying this.
An element of the show or an element of the book is around this anger management, program. And, they never really go to therapy per se, but it's therapeutic,
Mm-hmm.
And it made me remember a story that David Lynch told once, or maybe he told it many times, I don't know, but he told a story about he started seeing a therapist and he asked the therapist, is this going to impact my creativity? And the therapist said, oh, absolutely. So he stopped going. And I'm curious in your experience, right? I'm curious in your experience because I have my own kind of read on that. But I'm curious in your experience, how have you found, whether it's therapy directly or therapeutic behavior, how have you found it impacting your creativity? Or do you think that was just David Lynch just missed one time,
Oh, yeah. No, I love what David Lynch said. I think I've only gone to therapy twice in my life. Which,
I feel like I need to stop because
I'm remotely saying that at all.
Because I find that, the therapeutic expression is so powerful. And sometimes when I've already got it out in therapy, I don't have anything left to say,
Oh, that's so interesting. What's interesting is that this line of questioning has been a slight light bulb moment to me because I'm thinking, oh my God, maybe that's why I write. Maybe that's how, because I deal with, like in my kids' books, I dealt with all sorts of things that I dealt with,
Sure,
like dad who, ditched our family just before I was born, didn't meet him till I was a teenager, all these sorts of things, lots of issues. So interesting. Maybe that is why I write, is maybe David Lynch was onto something. Right. This is really interesting. I like that. It's like my version of therapy.
And, I've been such a devotee. I've been with my therapist for almost 6 years now.
Yeah.
And I always have this joke of like, going to the gym isn't your therapy. It's therapeutic.
Yeah.
But therapy is your therapy.
Right, right.
But then from the other side, it's like, that's me being just as much of a dick. You know what I mean? It's like, if this is more therapeutically powerful for you or useful for you, who am I to get in your way, right? Yeah. And I'm very curious about how people approach that, tightrope walk.
I just think that people probably just have very different inner lives as well. Maybe my inner life is just a little more simplistic than yours or something like that.
I would argue the other, but
and I will say, like the 2 times that I sought out therapy, they were so helpful. And the reason that I never had to go back wasn't because of what David Lynch said, but that they literally, each of them said something to me in that session that was weirdly a light bulb moment. And a great takeaway. So it helped me. But I think I probably went for very specific issues. Yeah. Whereas maybe you just have a lot more issues.
Well, you're not wrong. The irony is that I was working with him and then we were like, I think we're gonna start winding down. And then I Of course. I was like, actually,
Oh,
you know, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and then now
Yeah.
my fear of abandonment has kicked in. And so now I'm like, oh, now you can't leave me. Now we have to keep working together forever, right? You know,
I
but
kind of get that. Yeah.
it's
Or like,
weird.
I don't know. I'd worry if I somehow gave up my time slot that
Yeah.
I'd never get it back.
Right? He keeps on pushing me to be like, you know, you can just go out and live. You know, you're okay, right? You know, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna miss you. You know, you're my friend.
Yeah.
You know, he's
You're
like,
my
no.
friend that I pay
Yeah,
or
right.
whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This has just been such a treat. I'm so grateful that you took the time to chat with me, and I'm just, you know, this is a weird thing to say, but I'm very grateful for your book. It was the first book I read this year. And it was a great kind of way to kick off the year, especially with the idea of the resolution. The way it ended on a really hopeful, positive note actually was like it felt like it set up the year well. I'm really grateful for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do think it's ever so slightly zeitgeisty in that I feel like we're living in a time where a lot of people the rage is
Yes.
simmering beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And yeah, these people actually, well, I mean, they also exact revenge, but
Yeah.
but they do also kind of work through some of their issues in perhaps a more positive way.
That's the hope, right? You know, anger's benign, right? It's how you use it in the right way, you know, right? Before I have one last question for you, but before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to plug, anything you'd like the listeners to know about, where you'd like them to find you, anything like that?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm on Instagram. I think it's just susannielsen.com. You just have to know how to spell my name. And ditto, I have a website. Like if you want me to come do a book club visit or anything like that, you can contact me through my website.
Awesome.
Actually, season 4 of Family Law is currently airing on Global
Hey,
Thursday
okay.
nights at 9:00. Yeah, I think that's all I would plug at the
Fantastic.
moment. But
Okay.
thanks a lot. Super fun.
I always like to leave my listeners with something actionable that they can do out in the world this week. I'm curious, do you have anything? Yeah, it doesn't have to be big and huge.
Do your laundry? No.
Well, I was
okay.
going to say, is there anything you would recommend, you know, that people could try? I always frame it as to try and be a more effective friend either to themselves or to their community.
Wow, that's a really lovely question. Okay, possibly a slightly longer answer than
give it
you
to me.
want.
We don't have to be out of time. I just wanted to,
Okay.
you know, yeah.
Okay, because I'm coming at it from a bit of a side angle here, but after Christmas, my husband and I felt that something was a bit lacking in our lives. And it felt like a bit of like a spiritual component. And so we decided we're not religious, but we decided to go to church. And we went to, there's a United Church, the Canadian Center for Peace.
Is it the one like kind of on Granville?
It's like at Burrard and 16th.
Right, that's what I meant. Yeah.
So it's United Memorial.
A friend of mine goes there, actually.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's a United Church.
Yeah,
Yeah. So like, I hope they wouldn't be offended that I would say like religion light, but very, very community focused.
Yes.
And we actually really loved going there. Like the people were so welcoming.
I've been meaning to go actually because my friend goes and they're not
Okay.
very religious and I'm not, but I've been like, I think I need something like this. So
That's
it's so funny that you're telling me.
interesting. I wonder if
that
we
was the exact church that I've been like, I need to go to that.
That's
one, you know,
really
but
funny.
yeah,
I wonder if we
yeah.
met your friend.
Maybe,
I mean,
yeah.
we met a lot of people there.
Maybe.
But anyway, very, very welcoming,
Yeah.
very, very inclusive.
Yeah.
And I don't think the word God ever
Right.
weirdly came up. I remember that the sermon was about finding wisdom in nature, and we got to get up and sing. We even got to clap, which was amazing. So that was really fun. But I guess the actionable thing, I'm not suggesting that people go to church.
Find
I'm
Jesus.
really not. That's right, exactly. Hallelujah. And all of you heathens out there are going to hell. But what we started doing, and I should probably also add that we haven't been back yet
Right,
because Sunday's 10:30.
It's tough.
Really bad time to have church. I'm
Really
sorry.
bad time,
Like
yeah.
especially in Vancouver because we are active people, so we tend to be cross country skiing or cycling or running or doing something like that when church is on. But what we started doing, they also have a meditation group, and so we've been trying to meditate.
Gotcha.
Started at 5 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm up to 7.
Beautiful.
It's not a lot. So
That's
maybe
all you need.
an actionable thing I would say, because I do find weirdly having stuck to it now for all of about 2 weeks, which is not very long. So believe me, need to say I'm not talking like an expert, but as you're saying, it's like an actionable thing. I really notice how if I take that time and just, think about the words, gratitude, love, peace. I've even like breathed out a bit of love and peace towards people like Donald Trump, which was not easy.
Beautiful practice.
I feel like what it does is it takes you a little bit out of your own head and your own ego. And I guess my hope is that maybe that will translate into bigger things than that, because meditation is still, it's just like still, it's just me meditating. But, so I'm not, but I'd love to find something, I suppose, in the world where I could feel like I was, I don't know, doing something good for my community.
Yeah, but
I don't know that I've found that yet. But
I mean, I'm of the mind that is something that's good for your community. That's why I frame it collected, because, there's moments where we're not taking care of ourselves. We think we have to show up for this or that or the other thing, but we're in a bad spot and we don't show up as effectively as we could. Whereas if it's like, I want to be able to show up to help this, but in order to do that, I have to first help me. It's there's a therapy adage of you put your own air mask on first. Yeah. You take care of that first and then you can show up, That's
a great way of putting it. And actually, I do think that one small benefit that I have noticed is that I do feel like I'm paying more attention to my friends.
Exactly.
I'm checking in on people who are going through a harder time than I am. And I'm doing that on a more regular basis. So, yeah.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's not, if you miss a day or if you miss a week or something, it's not like now all that progress is gone. There's no such thing as backsliding in that regard, So go easy on yourself. I'm a huge proponent of meditation. So I love that you brought that up, because I'm like, you're on the perfect train, right? Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But thank you for that. One last time, Susin Nielsen, thank you so much for everything. This has been just lovely. And I don't have an official sign off for the show other than just to sort of awkwardly trail off,
Well, thank you for making my first podcast experience a delightful one. And see you in church.
That's the one. And that's it. Thank you so much to Susin for coming on the show. What an absolute treat it was to get to know her. I was just absolutely charmed by her energy and the stories she had to tell. I feel like I left that interview genuinely feeling like I made a friend, and that felt very, very cool. Only time will tell if I actually follow up on that, though. Also, I want to send a huge thank you to the Book Warehouse team. They have been so incredible through this entire process. I could not ask for a better team of collaborators. If you're interested in Snap, copies are available at the Book Warehouse on Main. They are signed by Susin herself. You can also find them at other fine book retailers, but if you're in Vancouver, check out the Book Warehouse. And thank you to Penguin Random House for sponsoring the booth. I'm hopeful that this will lead to further collaborations and we can just kind of grow from here. But that's going to be it for me this week, so let's wrap things up there. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to catch back here next week. But hey, I'm not going to worry about that right now, and neither should you, because that is then, and this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweet peas.